These plots were designed and developed to be demonstration research gardens. We're trying to look at Florida-friendly landscapes in particular. So we've designed the plots so that we have what we are calling our backyard. And in the backyard we have 75% plant material or plant beds, and 25% of the area is taken up with a turf area. And then in the front yard of our landscape, we have 75% turf and only 25% plant beds or plant material. We base the 25% plant material and 75% sod on what we calculate to be kind of a traditional landscape that you would find in an average planned unit development here in Florida. These lots are 5,000 square feet, and the reason why we picked that is we take kind of a standard quarter-acre lot that you would find in a regular planned unit development, and you subtract out a 2,000 square foot house, and you subtract out the square foot of a standard driveway and a patio. You're left with about 5,000 square feet of plantable area.
One of the things that we wanted to make sure for at least the design characteristics based off of some of the Florida-friendly principles, specifically biodiversity, we wanted to have an increase of massing of a diversity of plants. So it adds potential shelter, food source, place for reproduction for different types of insects, different types of wildlife, bird pollinators such as butterflies. So part of the designs really take into consideration what is the actual environmental characteristics that we're benefiting from with the plant selections. If we put all plants that are drought tolerant, don't need much water, we can then conclude that we might not need nearly as much irrigation. So that's one of the things that we really push for the Florida-friendly yards, whereas the traditional yards starts to be designed, you have a lot more turf, so it's going to require a lot more irrigation, especially throughout the summer months or the hotter months.
This mulch actually happens to be the mini bark mulch. We decided to use that because a lot of homeowners still prefer the mini bark mulch. The importance of mulch in the landscape, for one, is it helps keep the weeds down. Another very important reason to use mulch is because it will help to keep the moisture in the soil when you're irrigating, especially with the drip irrigation and the micro sprays. The mulch acts kind of like a blanket over the soil and keeps the soil moist. It also keeps the soil cooler, especially during the summer, and that helps so that the plants are not so heat stressed when it's really hot out. And just the opposite, in the winter, it again acts like a blanket and it will keep the soil a little bit warmer in the winter. And that's especially important here in North Florida, where we get maybe 3 or 4 freezes every winter. So there are some issues. People are a little bit worried about Florida-friendly landscape because they don't know what it is. They're concerned about what it will look like. A lot of people who are putting them in are putting an excessive amount of rock, thinking in terms of xeriscape landscaping. And so that's one of the other things that we want to study here. We're going to look at some visual quality preferences for plant material as part of our research, trying to see from the Florida-friendly standpoint what kinds of plant material people like as far as texture, form, and color and so forth, because we're trying to define a little bit better the look of a Florida-friendly landscape. In research, one of the difficult things to do is how do you actually measure whether one landscape has a nicer visual quality than another, and how do you actually measure how people perceive landscapes and what their preference is. This plot here, it was an extra plot, and we decided that we would use this plot actually to demonstrate some little used landscape plants that we thought were worthy of more use, and we wanted to do a little bit of testing with them. So a lot of these varieties that we have out here, for example, are dwarf varieties of some larger shrubs. We also have some new plants out here. For example, we have some of the purple pixie laurel petalum back there, and that's a very new plant. And we decided that we wanted to try that. It's a low-growing, more like a ground cover. And we also wanted to test some of the taller shrubs because we don't have too many shrubs in our other landscapes. So the whole idea here was to find some different varieties, some dwarf varieties, and some new varieties that aren't normally used. And we're just going to take care of them and see how they do and see if we can recommend them for more use in the landscape.
The irrigators.